Welcome to SWIRL AI Search, the podcast that dives deep into the world of enterprise AI search. Discover how to unlock the value hidden within your internal data and accelerate your journey to actionable insights. Let's cut through the noise and find out how you can get the most out of your internal information. As befitting a podcast about AI, this episode was created with the help of Notebook LM. Please enjoy the Swirl AI Search podcast.
All right, so let's be honest here for a second. How much of your workday, do you actually spend on work that feels like fulfilling work?
Yeah.
We're talking about stuff that makes you excited to get out of bed, right? The kind of work that you're using, your unique skills, your talents.
Right.
And if you're like most people, it's probably not enough.
Yeah.
And that feeling of being bogged down in, just the busy work, constantly looking for the right data, it's a motivation killer.
Oh, it's fascinating to me how much our energy gets sapped just by those tasks. And it's not even about just feeling busy, but it's more about like the busyness prevents us from doing the work that we're actually good at. Like what engages us?
Totally. And that's what got me so interested in this white paper that we're going to dive into today. It's
Yeah.
called SWIRL to Increase Motivation.
Hmm.
And it basically argues that this whole data scavenger hunt is a huge drain on motivation
Yeah.
and that AI could be the key to getting us back on track.
Okay.
And this is but it has to be the right kind of AI, designed with the human user in mind.
Yeah. The paper really drives home the point that humans are wired for purpose.
Yeah.
We are motivated by using our skills, by solving problems, by creating things.
Mm-hmm.
But when we spend the majority of our time on just these tedious, repetitive tasks, especially the ones involving data, our motivation plummets.
And the paper actually throws out a pretty alarming stat that spending more than 10% of your time on these kinds of unpleasant tasks can drastically decrease your motivation
Wow.
and even increase employee turnover.
Oh, wow.
It's no wonder why so many people just feel so burned out.
It's like a constant leak in your, energy reserves. Like
Yeah.
when you're stuck doing those mind-numbing tasks,
Hmm.
are you really in a flow state? Are you feeling creative and energized?
Right.
Probably not. You're just trying to get through it.
Ugh, tell me about it. Just last week, I spent hours trying to pull data from 3 different systems just to make one simple report.
Oh my gosh.
By the end, I was ready to throw my computer out the window. But wait, isn't this where AI is supposed to come in and save the day? I mean, we keep hearing about how AI is going to automate all the boring stuff, right?
Yeah, there's definitely potential. The paper even references an HBR article that found a strong correlation between AI adoption and increased job satisfaction.
Interesting.
But this is where it gets tricky. The success of AI hinges on how the tools are designed and implemented.
Okay, so help me understand this. What could go wrong? Because in theory, AI should be making things easier, not harder.
You would think so, right? But think about some of the AI tools that you've used in the past.
Yeah.
Have you ever run into a situation where the tool was so clunky, so unreliable or difficult to use that it actually made your life more complicated?
Oh, absolutely. It's like they took a simple task and then added 10 extra steps.
Yeah,
And sometimes I swear I spend more time troubleshooting the AI than I would have just doing the task manually.
exactly. And that's the very problem that this white paper is trying to address.
Okay.
They argue that if AI tools are going to actually boost motivation, they need to be incredibly user-friendly and seamlessly integrated into our workflows.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where their proposed solution comes in, SWIRL.
Okay, I'm intrigued. You mentioned Swirl is designed to make AI more user-friendly.
Yeah.
Can you give me a specific example of how that actually works in practice? What makes it so different from, all the other AI tools that are out there?
One of the key things that makes SWIRL stand out is its vectorless RAG capabilities.
Okay.
I know that sounds super technical, but bear with me.
Okay.
Imagine you need to find information that's scattered across tons of different sources, emails, documents, chat logs, you name it.
Yeah.
Traditionally, AI systems would need all of that data to be perfectly organized and formatted in a vector database before they can do anything useful with it.
So basically a ton of tedious prep work just to get the AI up and running.
Exactly, but SWIRL bypasses all of that.
Okay.
It can understand and retrieve information from all sorts of sources, regardless of their format, thanks to what they call zero ETL.
Okay.
No more manually transferring and reformatting data.
Wow.
SWIRL goes straight to the source and pulls what you need.
So it's like having a universal translator for your data.
Yeah.
It just understands what you need no matter how messy the original source is.
That's a great way to put it. And because SWIRL eliminates all that upfront data wrangling, it frees up so much of your time and energy for the work that actually matters.
That sounds incredibly powerful, especially for those of us who, feel like we're constantly drowning in data.
Yeah,
But if we're going to be realistic, there have to be some limitations to this approach, right? I mean, no system is perfect.
sure.
What are some of the potential downsides or challenges to using Swirl?
Yeah, you're absolutely right to be cautious. No system is like a magic bullet, and Swirl is no exception.
Right.
One potential challenge is making sure that data privacy and security are taken care of.
Yeah.
When AI is pulling information from so many different sources,
Yeah.
it's really crucial to have really robust systems in place to protect sensitive data.
That's a great point. Data security is always a concern, especially when you're talking about AI, having access to information from all corners of an organization.
Right.
I imagine that that would be a pretty big hurdle for companies to overcome, especially those that have, strict regulatory requirements around data privacy.
Absolutely. And another potential challenge is ensuring accuracy.
Yeah.
Swirl might be great at pulling information from all these diverse sources, but there's always a risk of, maybe misinterpreting data
Right.
or even pulling in irrelevant information.
Yeah.
So human oversight is still going to be really important.
That makes sense. It's like having a super efficient research assistant.
Yeah.
They can gather a ton of information for you,
Right.
but you still need to be the one to analyze it and make sure it's accurate and relevant.
Exactly. It's about, augmenting human capabilities, not replacing them entirely.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings us back to the core argument of this white paper, that AI's true potential lies in its ability to free us from those soul-crushing tasks.
Yeah.
So we can focus on the things that actually require human ingenuity and insight.
It's about working smarter, not harder. But, okay, let's say for a moment that we can overcome those challenges.
Okay.
Let's say Swirl or some other AI solution, really does live up to the hype.
Mm-hmm.
What would that mean for the future of work? How would it actually change the way that we approach our jobs?
That's where things get really exciting. Imagine a workplace where instead of, spending hours sifting through spreadsheets and chasing down data,
Yeah,
you could simply ask an AI assistant to pull the information that you need
right.
and in a format that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
And suddenly you have all this extra time
Yeah,
to dedicate
right.
to the work that truly matters.
You could actually focus on the big picture thinking, the strategic planning, the creative problem solving, all the stuff that most of us got into this line of work for in the first place.
Precisely, we could see a resurgence of, creativity and innovation.
Yeah.
People would be more engaged, more productive, and more likely to stick around.
And think about the impact on company culture. A motivated workforce is a more collaborative,
Yeah.
supportive, and ultimately successful workforce.
Right.
Instead of everyone feeling stressed and overwhelmed, they would be energized and excited to come to work.
It's a complete reframing of how we view work.
Mhm.
Instead of it being like a source of dread and burnout,
Yeah.
it could become a source of fulfillment and personal growth.
Mm.
But here's the thing. Even if Swirl turns out to be just another overhyped tech solution,
Yeah.
the underlying message here is incredibly powerful. It's about recognizing the very real problem of, this motivation drain in the modern workplace.
Right.
And exploring how AI could be part of the solution.
It's about taking back control of our time and our energy. Instead of being slaves to the data deluge, we can harness the power of AI to streamline our workflows, automate the mundane, and unlock our true potential. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty optimistic about the future.
Me too.
But
It's important to remember that, technology is only as good as the people who use it.
exactly, AI can be a powerful tool for change. But it's up to us to make sure that it's used ethically and responsibly. We need to be the ones driving the technology, not the other way around.
Right.
So let's say I'm like a leader in my organization and I'm, completely on board with this AI-powered motivation revolution.
Yeah.
Where do I even begin? What are some practical steps that companies can take to start moving in this direction?
Yeah, it can feel really overwhelming. Like, where do you even start,
Yeah.
with something as big as this?
Right.
But I think the first step, like we've been saying, is really just about kind of shifting the mindset.
Yeah.
Companies need to move beyond seeing, employee motivation as like a nice to have and really recognize it as a critical factor that impacts a bottom line.
It's an investment, not an expense.
Exactly. And that investment can take many forms. It could be implementing AI tools like Swirl,
Right.
but it can also involve, simpler, more immediate actions like
Right.
start by reevaluating existing workflows. Identify those tasks that are truly draining for employees, the ones that are sucking the energy and creativity out of their day.
So it's not necessarily about throwing, a bunch of fancy new technology at the problem.
Right.
It's about like taking a step back and being like, okay, how can we make work better?
Exactly. And that could involve, providing better training and support so that people feel more confident in their roles,
Mm-hmm.
or giving people more autonomy and flexibility, how they approach their work.
It's about empowering people, not just automating tasks.
And that empowerment, in turn, leads to greater motivation, engagement, and ultimately success.
Yeah.
If you can create a culture where people feel valued,
Yeah.
where they feel like they have a real impact,
Yeah.
that's when the magic happens.
I love that, where the magic happens. It's not just about, efficiency and productivity.
Right.
It's about creating an environment where people can actually thrive.
Absolutely. And I think that's what makes this whole conversation about AI and motivation so compelling.
Yeah.
It's not just about robots taking over our jobs.
Yeah.
It's about how can we use technology to create a better future of work, a future where people are energized and engaged,
Yeah.
where they can focus on their strengths and make meaningful contributions.
So what does this all mean for, the average listener?
Yeah.
What's the key takeaway here?
I think the biggest takeaway is that we have more power than we realize to shape our work lives.
Yeah.
We don't have to be passive victims of soul-crushing tasks and endless data drudgery.
Right.
We can demand better, from ourselves and from the companies we work for.
We can advocate for, tools and systems that actually support our well-being and allow us to focus on the work that truly matters.
And as AI continues to evolve, it's crucial that we remain vigilant and ensure that it's being used to enhance our work lives, not diminish them.
Yeah.
It's about keeping that human-centric perspective front and center.
We need to be the ones steering the ship, not the passengers. Now, before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a little thought experiment.
I love thought experiments.
Okay, so imagine you have a magic wand, and you can automate any single task in your workday.
Okay.
No matter how big or small, what task are you waving goodbye to, and how would that change your overall motivation and job satisfaction? Think about it and maybe even, share your answer with us on social media. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
That's a great question to ponder.
Yeah.
It really gets to the heart of, what we've been discussing today.
Yeah.
By identifying those tasks that drain our energy and enthusiasm, we can start to envision a future where they no longer hold us back.
It's about reclaiming those lost hours and redirecting them towards, something that truly sparks our passion and our creativity.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe that small shift will lead to something truly amazing.
It just might.
Well, folks, that's a wrap on our deep dive into AI and motivation. It's been an incredibly thought-provoking conversation.
It has.
And I hope you've come away with some new insights and maybe even a little bit of inspiration.
As always, the learning never stops. We encourage you to check out the resources mentioned in this episode and continue exploring this fascinating topic.
Until next time, keep diving deep, keep asking questions, and keep striving for a future of work that's both fulfilling and inspiring.